Good morning and welcome to our 20th MCC at home. Got a whole lot going on this morning. Alastair will be giving a talk on the very relevant and pertinent topic of work. After that, I'll be having a quick catch up with two of our congregational members, Popsy and Tawanda. And last, after that, we'll be giving a quick plug for one of our ministries that I think will be of great interest to some of you out there. So thanks again for joining us. We don't take it for granted. It's great to have you with us. And now, Alastair.
In years to come, someone will write a social history of the COVID-19 epidemic, and wouldn't it be nice to read it now? One of the aspects that will surely be dealt with is how the epidemic has affected work. I was reading an article in the Guardian Weekly yesterday that used the acronym WFH without any explanation, and it took me a while to translate that to working from home. And that's been a reality for many people now. The Zoom meetings, trying to find a workspace in the house or unit, having to juggle work, childminding and household jobs, and trying to ignore all the distractions. And it seems likely that WFH will become a permanent work practice for some or many, as employers realise that there's money to be saved if office space is reduced or eliminated, and employees realise that the cost and strain of commuting can be done away with. But the epidemic has also led to huge job losses in hospitality and tourism, of course, but also in the performing arts, the university sector, among others. It's to the government credit that they've swallowed their economic principles, at least to some extent, and dug deep into the financial coffers to support many of those who find themselves unemployed. But the unemployment forecasts are grim, and it seems likely that we shall see double-digit unemployment next year. So in this context, it seemed a good idea to look again at work and say what the Bible has to say about it, something which we last did in 2011 as part of a series called Living the Dream. Back in the early 1900s, the sociologist Max Weber coined the term Protestant work ethic to explain what he saw as the economic prosperity of the northern European countries compared to those of the Mediterranean and elsewhere, where Catholicism or other religions held sway. Weber attributed the work ethic particularly to Calvinism. Calvin taught that not all people were among the elect who would be saved. It was impossible to know whether anyone was one of the elect, but their outward characteristics might give it a clue. The lazy almost certainly weren't, so working hard and becoming prosperous at least might give you the feeling that you are among the chosen. Luther, and especially Calvin, also taught that work and making a profit was legitimate, and even demanded of Christians. More recent analysis doesn't support Weber's idea. Plenty of societies have become prosperous without the Protestant work ethic. But there's no doubt that after the Reformation, work for the sake of making a profit rather than merely surviving became the norm in Western society. As our society became more secular, the idea that profits should be invested or used for good works has been overtaken by consumerism, so that making a profit and spending our money now seems to be some sort of obligation in order to keep the country's financial wheels turning. It's remarkable how little surprise there was when the government handed out hundreds of dollars to each citizen simply so that they would spend it and keep the wheels turning. This emphasis on work has led to people being defined by the type of work they do. When we meet someone new, the first question we ask, or want to ask, is not so much how do you do as what do you do? Because the response is crucial to knowing where we fit in the social hierarchy. My wife Jean, who has a PhD in hydrology, can tell of many social gatherings with my university colleagues where she's been dropped from the conversation immediately after confessing that she doesn't work. Not that having a PhD defines your status either. So here comes another pressure. If what we do and how much we do defines us socially, we must work more and get promoted higher. And if everyone's doing it, it becomes a sort of arms race leading to workaholism. And is this really living the dream? But then there's the dreadful opposite, unemployment. If work defines us, being unable to work is devastating, not only for financial reasons, but for the sense of being redundant, somehow being surplus to requirements. Okay, so what can we learn from the Bible about work and our attitude to it? First of all, it's perhaps here more than in any other area where we see that our society is very different from the one into which the New Testament was written. The New Testament is most accessible to modern readers when it's being directed towards Greek rather than Jewish culture, as in Luke's Gospel or most of Paul's letters. So it's important to realise that for educated Greeks and Romans, manual labour was shameful, and even white-collar work directed to practical ends was considered way below the abstract philosophising of the leisured classes. However, as in all societies, someone has to do the work, and the gospel spoke loudly to the lower classes. But there would also have been converts from the richer levels of society, and the teaching was directed to both types. We need to start with some principles established right at the start. At the very beginning of Genesis, we see God as a worker, a creator, and one who gives humans a role as sub-creators to work in the garden in which they were placed. So from the very start, we were expected to work, rather than just lie down and have the fruit drop into our mouths. Further into the Old Testament, Proverbs and Ecclesiastes are tough on laziness. Proverbs 6:6 says, "Go to the ant, you sluggard, consider its ways and be wise. It has no commander, no overseer or ruler, yet it stores its provisions in summer and gathers its food at harvest. How long will you lie there, you sluggard? When will you get up from your sleep? A little sleep, a little slumber, a little folding of the hands to rest, and poverty will come on you like a bandit, and scarcity like an armed man." And down in Ecclesiastes 2, chapter 10, "If a man is lazy, the rafters sag. If his hands are idle, the house leaks." So yes, there are indeed practical reasons to work. But as John Stott points out, work, whether paid or not, is more than that. It's the means by which we achieve self-fulfillment. Retirement brings that sharply into focus. When work finishes, what am I going to do all day? Retirement can't just be one long holiday. It will soon get pretty boring. You've got to have some employment, be it volunteering, working the garden, writing the great Australian novel, or cataloguing your stamp collection. Then what did Jesus say about work? Well, nothing about the 40-hour week or women doing housework. But he told several several parables set in work situations. But they were not about work, rather than they were about the kingdom. But he did give us some principles. So the lilies of the field don't work, or toil, or spin, but they're still gorgeous. And the rich man was a fool to build more barns, because his life was finite, and he should have been thinking more about what his wealth could do in the here and now than storing it up for an uncertain future. And Martha had her priorities wrong when she chided Mary for ignoring the housework so that she could listen to Jesus. So that when all's said and done, work doesn't matter. Jesus says we are worth more than many sparrows. And above all else, we should be concerned about our place in the kingdom and what we should do to anticipate its coming. It's in the Acts and the letters that we start to find teaching on the practical outworking of the Christian way of life. It seems at first that the new disciples expected Jesus' return to be imminent, so people were inclined to abandon work and live communally. But when it became clear that we were in it for the long haul, Paul and James start to teach about the work-life balance. In several places, Paul makes it clear that though he was a teacher and a preacher, he was quite happy to work for a living, supporting himself to a large degree. So in Acts chapter 20, for example, he says, "You yourself know that these hands of mine have supplied my own needs and the needs of my companions." And in his letter to the church at Thessalonica, Paul extends the principle to other people. In 2 Thessalonians chapter 3, verse 8, he says, "Nor did we eat anyone's food without paying for it. On the contrary, we worked night and day, labouring and toiling, so that we would not be a burden to any of you. And we did this not because we do not have the right to such help, but in order to make ourselves a model for you to follow. For even when we were with you, we gave you this rule: if a man will not work, he shall not eat. We hear that some among you are idle. They're not busy, they are busybodies. Such people we command and urge in the Lord Jesus Christ to settle down and earn the bread they eat. This seems to suggest some sort of community living, and it may have been directed at rich converts who weren't used to work, or simply at those who were prepared to take advantage of the system. But Paul clearly says that everyone should earn their food. Writing to the folk at Ephesus, Paul takes this a little bit further. In Ephesus chapter 4 and verse 28, he says, "He who has been stealing must steal no more, but must work, doing something useful with his own hands, that he may have something to share with those in need." So work is not simply to fill the time or simply to supply one's own needs, but to produce a shareable surplus. Now, another massive difference between then and now was the presence of a slave class in society. And it's not surprising that converts came from among them. Paul speaks to them in his letter to the people at Colossae. He says, "Whatever you do, work at it with all your heart, as working for the Lord, not for men." And although we don't have a slave class today, Paul here gives us a vital principle for the many people whose work is not at all vocational, absorbing or inspiring, in fact, just downright boring and drudgery. As the 17th century poet George Herbert put it in his old-fashioned language, "A servant with this clause makes drudgery divine. Who sweeps a room as for thy laws makes that and the action fine." You may be cleaning toilets, but if it's done for the Lord, it becomes something fine. And finally, James has a bit to say to the rich converts who were still in business. In James chapter 1, he says, "The brother in humble circumstances ought to take pride in his high position, but the one who is rich should take pride in his low position, because he will pass away like a wild flower. For the sun rises with scorching heat and withers the plant. Its blossom falls and its beauty is destroyed. In the same way, the rich man will fade away, even while he goes about his business." And further on in chapter 4, "Now listen, you who say, today or tomorrow we will go to this or that city, spend a year there, carry on business and make money. Why, you do not even know what will happen tomorrow. What is your life? You are a mist that appears for a while and then vanishes. Instead, you ought to say, if it is the Lord's will, we will live and do this or that. As it is, you boast and brag. All such boasting is evil." The criticism here is not so much of riches or business of themselves, but of the tendency to think that our wealth and resources make us independent of God, and to imagine that our wealth, our time and our plans are our own to spend. Back in the original Living the Dream series, Jeremy used 3 R's to sum up his contribution to the series. The 3 R's were reject, rejoice and redeem. And how do they apply here? We should reject the idea that work, that is paid employment, defines us. We should reject workaholism, trying to keep up with the neighbours. We should reject scorn for those who are unemployed. But we should also reject laziness. When we should rejoice in simply working, whether paid or not, in serving God in whatever we do, in working in partnership with God, in being able to share our resources with others. And we should redeem dull work, low status work, and unpaid work by doing it for the Lord. We're still a long way from seeing how this COVID-19 pandemic will work out, but whatever it means for the world of work, these principles will always apply. Thanks for that. And now Matt is going to have a chat with Tawanda and Popsy.
Welcome to Hope and Popsy and Tawanda.
Morning.
Thanks so much for coming in, guys.
Thank you.
Yeah, thanks for taking the time. You both left family and friends behind. So Popsy, I believe that almost all your family are in England still, or that's the majority?
Yes, extended family included.
Extended family included, okay. And
Yes.
T, your family are back, or at least most of them are in Zim, yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, so I've been wondering, given that it's been a while now since you've both been here in your new home, so I suppose what difference has being part of a church family and also having a faith like made to, I suppose, you dealing with and processing being separated from people that you love and starting up life together somewhere new?
I think MCC have helped a lot in us just, becoming part of a family. So MCC is pretty much our family here. If we need anything or if we need to talk to anyone, there's, everyone is ready to have a chat or to even have a meal and things like that, and that makes it easier. So it's just in your four corners where you've got people there, people who can help, and people who you can pretty much talk to if you need to talk to. Yeah, but sometimes because being away from home is not always easy. And you look at the situation now with the COVID, you always worry about, I worry about my mom because she's at that age where, you don't know, but I guess, praying and having that faith, it keeps us going.
Yeah, great, yeah.
Yeah, well, faith is the most important thing for me. I think just knowing that God is there and knowing that you're loved, and having had such a wonderful conversion to Christianity when I first converted. For me, it was a true, decision to either give up Christianity and to let it go or to take it seriously. And I chose to take it seriously.
Yeah.
And I really felt God's presence.
Yeah, right.
So that keeps me going.
Yes.
Yeah, just really and truly knowing that He's there and He loves you. It's not always easy, and sometimes, those doubts creep in, unfortunately, but that's the main thing.
You've been a professional athlete for a decent chunk of your life. I'm still not exactly how sure you are, because you look like about 21, but you could be like 40 or 50, I'm not sure, but you look remarkably into it. But fair to say you've been a professional athlete, a cricketer for a decent part of your life, and you're still involved in the industry. So I've been wondering, given that, my guess is that can involve, again, like a fair bit of competition. It could be a really high pressure environment. It'd be the kind of place where perhaps, your ego, as in someone's ego, and their pride could really come to the fore. So I've been wondering how, again, your faith, your Christianity, what difference that's made, how that's helped you, I suppose, cope and flourish in a pretty, again, high pressure, sometimes tough profession.
I think it's just being grateful for the opportunity. That's what I've put it up to, because there's so many guys there who would want to be in the same position, to be able to play sport at the highest level or represent their country.
Yes,
and it doesn't always happen, but I put my pretty much how do I put it? I just put it to God, the fact that I've had that opportunity, and when I played, every opportunity, I gave it everything. I played as if it was my last game. But I had my ups and downs, but through that, I think just knowing that God is a plan for me. Helped me through that, but also knowing that God has plans for whoever would have taken my sport in some situations. So, just being humble and knowing that, whatever you do, God has a plan for you. And I've got one, I'll probably say it's a testimony for me, because probably just towards the end of my career, before I left Zim, 2015, so I played cricket, and then after I got injured, I struggled to get back because I lost, if you're talking cricket terms, I lost my pace and stuff, so I had to remodel my bowling, and that was hard. And I moved to the UK and played club cricket, and so I then got a call while I was in Ireland to say, do you want to go to Bangladesh and represent the Zimbabwe A side? And did pretty well when I was there, and then I was selected for the national side to go travel back to Bangladesh. And the day before I was meant to travel back, I was told that you're not going anymore. So that probably would be something that would have crushed me.
Yes.
But I prayed about it, and I knew God had a plan for me. And unfortunately, the whole squad struggled.
Yeah.
On that tour, and a few changes were made, and so from 2009 to 2015, I hadn't played an international game, and the next call up to international cricket was to the World Cup. That's when I travelled to Australia and played in the World Cup, and then that's when I made connections in Australia, and I've ended up here. So if I look at that, I see God's hand in that, and with everything that I've gone through, I think I've seen God's hand of my life.
Thanks, guys.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Are you crafty? Do you have a fondness for caffeine, whether that be in coffee or tea form? Do you just like the company of your fellow women? Now, if any or all of the above apply to you, I've got a fantastic offer, if you like. That probably sounds a little bit too mercenary. I've got a fantastic opportunity. That sounds way better. So one of the things that we run as a church for people both within and also outside of the church is something called Craft Coffee Chat. Craft Coffee Chat, or Triple C, as it's also affectionately known, occurs every single Monday from 10:30 a.m. through to 12. So it's a group for ladies who are interested in doing craft together, or just sitting around having some company and shared hot drinks with people and watching other people do craft. It doesn't matter what your craft is, people like bring along their own individual projects and just work on them, side by side. So that's every single Monday at our church building, the corner of Narina and Sandfly Road, a ladies group, 10:30 to 12, Craft Coffee Chat. Now, all you got to do is come along and BYO cushion if you want something a little bit softer to go down on one of our standard church, rather bland plastic chairs. So a cushion, BYO, and also $2, and that's it. And you'll get company, you'll get hot drinks, you'll get some snacks, and, if you want to, the opportunity to kind of develop your particular art project or craft. I should also say that most of the time, a lot of the stuff that gets produced there is then passed on to local charities for people in need. Things like, say, mittens, rugs, blankets, beanies, that kind of thing. So if you're interested in checking out, you or maybe someone you know, Craft Coffee Chat, please just reach out to us via the regular channels, our email, hit us up on Facebook, and we'll give you more details. That's Craft Coffee Chat, 10:30 Monday to 12 o'clock for any women out there who are interested. Thanks.